Hey, folks, and welcome back to Bear Talk, the podcast where we dive into the intersections of design, technology, and how we grow as humans. Lately, I've been going through a bit transition myself, shifting my work, my job from a core in-house designer into a fractional product design partner role. It's exciting, but I'm honest, it's also daunting. I find a lot of times just need someone who's been 3 steps ahead of me to say, hey, this is normal, or try to look at this that way. So I used to think mentorship was something you only did at the start of your career. But as I've navigated this new chapter, I realized it's actually the fuel for every state of growth. So that's why I'm so thrilled about our guest today. He's someone who took that simple human need for connection and scaled it into something massive. What started as a scrappy Google spreadsheet during the pandemic has turned into a global movement that just passed 300 million minutes of mentorship. He's a designer at heart, a Forbes 30 under 30 honoree, and co-founder and CEO of ADPList. Today, we're talking to Felix Lee. Felix, thanks so much for joining me. How are you doing?
Hey Bear, I'm really excited to be here and thank you for inviting me. I'm feeling excited and ready for this interview.
Thanks, Felix. So before we jump in, what's been on your mind lately? I know you've just been to China a few weeks ago, and now you're back to Singapore. So yeah, tell me about what's your recent doing, or what's in your mind.
Yeah, as you've seen, I've just came back from China. It's been about 15 years since I last visited China with my parents, and it's transformed so much. Right? And in 2026, I mean, I could not think of a better way to start this year with a solo trip to China. I met a lot of founders, a lot of startups there working on latest technology, AI, even space technology, right? Rocket technology. It's just incredible. I mean, the ecosystem. And so this year is, of course, great, off to a great start. China has really blown me away. And in a few weeks' time, I will be moving to San Francisco, which is a new chapter of my life. And, frankly, I don't know what to expect from a new chapter of my life, but, it's all sorts of emotions for this year. I mean, you're moving to a new place. I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm excited. I'm happy, everything. So I think all this just kind of makes up for a good journey and a good story.
Right. It's bring me a lot of questions, Felix. But yeah, let's talk about your decision to move to San Francisco. So is it a recent decision or something you planned for a while? And what's the reason behind it?
Yeah. I've been to San Francisco a few times back and forth. I would say at least about 4 times now. And each time I was there for 3 months. And the stories that I would share, and one of the most memorable moments that I have is that when I'm in San Francisco, something magical always happens. And that magic always happens when you meet a random stranger. And in this case, there was once where I met the founder of Midlify. His name is Han. And it's the first time I met him. This is a stranger completely new to me. And after I met him, we met a few more times. He invited me to work in his office because I was a tourist. I had nowhere to work. He invited me to his office to work with his co-workers, and he even ordered lunch for me. And after the day, he said, "Hey Felix, could you stay back? I would love to chat more with you." So we chatted everything under the sun, from AI to technology to politics. And he also tried to understand ADPList as a company, as a business. And thereafter, I think a few weeks later, he introduced me to one of his investors, right? And this is someone that I barely spent any time with. And he also invited me to his house to play board games with his friends. We don't, I think if you're in San Francisco, these things happen, but it's something that you don't want to take for granted. And when I'm back in Singapore, these things don't happen this often. Right? People are not that open-minded. They are very closed up in their own groups, unless, you're part of a community or you're part of something, not just random strangers. And I often find that story like between me and Han could only happen in San Francisco, even after traveling to so many places. So I think that's the first reason why I wanted to move to San Francisco, just the open-mindedness of people there, ready to share their knowledge and their network. I think that's incredible. And of course, I hope to give them the same as well. Then the second reason, which is really more personal, which is I think, it's 2026 right now. We are living in one of the most exciting times for AI. And of course, there is so many layers to AI. You have the energy, infrastructure, chip layer, and application layer, right? I'm a founder who is a very consumer facing founder. So I like to build consumer products. And I think it has gotten to a point where we've got good enough models, we've got good enough infrastructure that's going to get better over the years. And it is now time to explore what it all means for consumers. And I cannot think of a better place to do it than San Francisco, where people are ready to adopt new technology, give you feedback, ready to just risk it and invest in you. It's just a great environment to try out new things in this AI era. So I mean that is a big reason why I'm moving there.
Awesome. I love those findings. I really love the story I share you between you and Han, and how the chemistry happens and opens some new opportunities. Because I've been to San Francisco a couple of years ago, but it's just a short while and haven't got the chance to experience this. Yes, it sounds really like the TV show Silicon Valley. It
Yeah.
sounds really like, okay, meet some stranger and able to collaborate and work something together. I really like that. And I think it's also relevant to the density of this opportunity is much higher in that city, in that place, than other places around the world. So yeah, I totally agree on that. But I have something in my mind while you're sharing this is the technology of AI is going really fast in that place. But in other places, for example, in other parts of the world, and people just live quite the same as they used to be. So yeah, because I just experienced this while I'm doing some AI products and explorations and also some client work. But when I back in China and visit my family and friends, I find many daily life still the same. So it doesn't change much. So it's quite interesting to see this like two words happening in parallel. And one word is just growing really fast, lots of new ideas. And the other word, I'm not critical about that. It's just stay quite stable, which is quite nice. It's build a baseline of daily life. But for me, I quite enjoying that we can look at some new opportunities on that side and also able to uh, keep in touch with those daily life. I don't know. It's hard to form it as a question, but do you have some similar feelings of these
Yeah.
two words?
Well, you see, I've always looked at San Francisco and the Bay Area in general as a bubble, right? It's a little bit the way that a friend of mine would describe is that it is a little bit like traveling into the future. And San Francisco, it's of course living in that future, and it's not a future that it's guaranteed. It is a future that is still trying to figure itself out. In some sense, it feels like the simulation. And I think that it is one of those things where when you go to San Francisco, you feel like you are so far behind. And if you get out of San Francisco, you feel like everywhere is so far behind as well. And San Francisco is very, very far ahead, right? I think there is a certain beauty to it, which is maybe the best startups and the best founders would be able to kind of marry both worlds together and say that, San Francisco is 5 years, 10 years ahead, and maybe I can, or maybe that's 2, 3 years ahead. And how can I bring this forward to the present moment for the people? And I think often the best founders are the one who figure that out. The best consumer founders are the one who says, okay, the world doesn't really need all this crazy like Claude bot or like mode boat thing or whatever. Maybe the world needs a different version of this. And how can I learn from San Francisco bubble, the Silicon Valley bubble, and how can I build this for the world? How can I translate that? I think the best founders are the best translator of technology into great experiences for people. There is just so many great technologies that I've seen in San Francisco that hasn't been able to get out of the ecosystem because it's just so far ahead, and the founders are maybe sometimes too technical and they are not able to kind of bring it back to reality.
Yeah, yeah, I love that point. It feels like we always call it incubator or like this is something for new ideas. And the best startup founder or business people can find a connection of these two words and able to bring something far ahead for other people's daily life. And for me, it's quite challenging, to keep the trend, to keep up the trend, and to be able to consume or even just to see how it goes around this fast growing world. And now I find another tip or another challenge is to be able to detect signals from noise, from lots of noises. because lots of things is happening. And for example, you mentioned open Claude or Meltbook. So this is the topic for now. A couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, there were other hot topics, and people just don't discuss it or not able to spend time or effort exploring it. So for me, I feel it's quite challenging to get used to those FOMO and to be able to keep my mental health good in a good state so that I can keep saying, how do you find? First, do you feel FOMO or do you feel like overwhelming of this fast growing industry? And second, are there any tips or are there any approaches you're using to deal with that?
Oh, that's such a great question, and I think this is going to be so useful for a very long time to come. I don't particularly feel FOMO for a lot of things, and especially with everything that's going on right now, I don't feel a sense of that. I think the way that the world works is very sometimes very simple, but we overcomplicate it, and that's and very very noisy world. You have a lot of technology that was supposed to happen but did not, or you have a lot of technology that were too early or maybe too late. If we look at Claude Bot as an example, I mean, it is supposed to be what Siri was envisioned to be. And
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
it is not a technology that I think anyone would not have imagined, right? It is basically like Jarvis in Tony Stark, where you tell it something and it performs the entire task for you. It does everything. So it is not particularly surprising that CloudBot existed. Now, would I have wanted to build it? I don't think so. Oh, my Siri, my Siri just. So the thing is that I would not have wanted to build CloudBot. I mean, because I'm not the founder who is interested in that. And I think a lot of times people rush into these things is because it's not because they're interested in it, but because they don't want to lose out. And I think if you go into something where you're not inherently interested in and you're just there because you don't want to lose out, then I think in the long term you don't have the advantage to be a very good founder, because you just don't have the passion and the interest to try to do it better than anyone else. So back to CloudBot, I mean, it's not a far-fetched technology. I mean, all of us could have imagined this would happen, years later down the road. I mean, if you look at virtual reality, we know that it is not happening today, but we know that someday it is going to happen, right? And we look at maybe cryptocurrencies or going to digital currencies, it is not happening today on a mass volume yet, but I'm sure one day it will happen. So humans will then FOMO at the very moment where it starts to take off. But I think the truth is that we need to hold such a long-term vision that we know that it is going to happen and we just start building it right now. So many people do not have the long-term vision. That is why they jump into every hype there is, right? Every single hype, they jump into it. And I don't think that is necessarily the best use of the time and energy. I think have a vision for the future that you're certain that it's going to happen, and then you kind of build backwards from there. And I think everything else is just, really noise, to be honest. And if you are consistently getting pulled left and right with different noise, then it will be very distracting for your career. It will be very distracting for what, you want to build. I think that's the fundamental truth.
Are there any difference between a vision for a person individually and his career, or like for you, it could be a vision for your product, ADPList, or other new products. And it could be a vision for yourself, like as a designer or as an entrepreneur. So is there any difference between these two, or like for you, like how it works for you? How do you define your vision and your product's vision, things like that?
Well, there is many different types of vision. I think one, you have a vision for a family, your personal life, maybe work as well. I often think that vision itself, it comes as a summary of a lot of things, right? A summary of a few things. I think one is a summary of what you are truly excited about and ready to contribute to the future. That is one vision that you should have. It's like, what makes you excited? Is it fintech? Is it like certain things in AI? Is it like spaceships? Whatever. What are you excited about and what do you want to work on? The second thing I think from a vision perspective is where do you want to be, right? Do you want to be in San Francisco? Do you want to be in Singapore, China? Like, where do you want to take this excitement to? And then last but not least, I think it's also marrying that into your personal life, which is how do you build a fulfilling life around these goals and around these visions that you have. I often find that there is a narrative where you should be unhappy while building very big dreams. And I mean, frankly, there is always going to be unhappy moments and moments where you feel more stress. But the way that I look at it is that at the end of it, when you are about to sleep and you ask yourself, would you imagine yourself doing something else? And if the answer is no, then I think you're on the right path, right? Which is, yes, I'm suffering. Yes, like there are down moments, but I would not do anything else. I would still do this, right? At the end of the day. So for me, I mean, ADPList is one of those things. Going to San Francisco is one of those things where I'm unsure what is the, what's going to happen there. I have no friends, no family, like no close friends or family there. Like there is just a lot of things that is unknown. But would I, have it other way else? I don't think so. Right. I don't think so. And I think that is really kind of like being able to find your purpose, being able to follow through, and being able to commit to something bigger than yourself. There is this quote that I really love that I saw it on Instagram, or I don't know, on X or something, where it says, what a privilege it is to be able to feel the stress that you're feeling right now and to do the work that you're doing right now that you have once dreamed about. And I think what it's saying, it's really that, all this stress and all these things that is happening in your life, in my life, they were one sort of our dream, like to be able to get here. And I mean, ADPList is pretty well known in the design community today. It's pretty well known in the tech community today. And I get a lot of pressure from many different things, and I get a lot of controversial stuff as well. But every night I sleep and I'll tell you that I would not do it differently. I would not, have a different life, because all this pressure, all this, expectations, this is exactly what I asked for. This is exactly what I work for. And so I think that's kind of like how I think vision should be, which is, it's not going to always be happy, but it's really something that you should find and you should feel fulfilled at the end of the day.
You might suffer in the short term, but yeah, for the long term, it's always like you feel achieved and happy about what you will get. I love that.
Exactly.
Right. Speaking of ADPList, I'd like to discuss this a little bit more, because for my audiences, it's also, some people might heard of it, some people might not. And for me, it's quite interesting because I remember during the pandemic stage, I stayed at home with family and tried to keep my head out of water, like online meetings, parenting, everything at the same time. And I remember I saw your post on LinkedIn quite regularly at that time about how designers can support each other. And that pretty much like before you officially start ADPList as a product or as a service. And then after that, for a while, that it's became a great product and a big community that for designers globally able to collaborate. So yeah, tell us a little bit story, like how it started. And I think at first it's just could be just a side project for you, but then it became a serious, like not a business, a serious project to full-time work on it. So tell us a little bit more about this. So
Yeah. Well, of course, today it's a business, right? We have to run it. We have to run it and make sure that we can sustain it properly. It wasn't easy. I think we started this with very good, very naive to a certain extent type of dream where the access to knowledge and mentorship should be available for everyone. And it is still the case. 90% of the mentorship on ADPList is completely free, and we're practically losing money on every course that happens on the platform, right? Because you got to host the server, you gotta have the video call, everything. So we lose a lot of money while doing it. But that is what I think the world deserves. I think the world deserves access to great people and great knowledge without having any roadblocks. And when we first started, this was the vision. And when we, like 4 years down now, right now, it's close to 5 soon, it's still exactly the same. And one of the reasons why I decided to leave my full-time job previously, I had a very good full-time job, but decided to leave it then was because it is one of those things where you know that you only have one chance in your life to do it. Things, ADPList was taking off back then as a side project. People loved it. We had many supporters as well. And so it was one of those moments where if you don't do it, then I think you'll regret it for the rest of your life. That was one of those things, right? And the second thing that I thought about was that, there was no other free mentorship platform that was doing this at scale. And there was no one to drive it properly and clearly. So I said, look, if I don't do this, I think mentorship is going to be paid for a lot of people. And of course, we don't get thanks very often here at ADPList. But just imagine that if ADPlist were not here, I think every single mentorship that you have online would be paid if you were to go to any other platforms out there. And so I think that was one of those things where I told myself, I have to try to disrupt this for the industry, whether for designers or coaches, like I want to disrupt it. And of course, while disrupting, we created a lot of noise. We created a lot of good, just so many things all at once, chaos, positive things, everything, right? And so that was a big reason why I left, was because I think this could have been a very disruptive mission that I think would make the world a slightly better place than before.
Awesome, Felix. Well, you're sharing this. I came to a quote that I read on X, I think. It's called, there are three major chances for everyone. And that's kind of like a once in a lifetime opportunities for everyone. Could be like 2 to 3 chances. And you might just lose one or two. And what you can do is to learn and get prepared so that you won't lost chance to seize it. And it's quite, I don't know why, it just came to my mind, quite relevant to what you shared. There are two questions that just regards to this. One is around the decision that you had to quit or to leave your previous job and to do this on full time. And I believe at that time it's not as a stable or as a business. So that how did you make this decision at that stage? Like what was the rationale, or are there any pushback from your friends or family or even yourself? So that's the first question. But I will leave the second question later after you talk a little bit about this one.
Well, I was very lucky to have had all support from friends and family. I mean, ADPlist is not my first startup. It won't be my last as well. But I've just been very privileged to have had friends and family who were ready to, do this with me. I mean, I grew up in a low income to middle income family. And my parents, they work until 2 a.m. every day. And first of all, I'm not even a university graduate. I did not come from a background like most Asians or most Singaporeans. And I think to be able to do what I do and have such tremendous support without coming from a privileged background, I mean, it is in itself, one of the best things I can ask for in life. And, sometimes I think I ask myself, I mean, what would happen if it doesn't work out? But I also ask myself what would happen if it did. And if it did work out, then I think the story would be amazing. The story would be wonderful for so many people watching and witnessing this journey. And I hope that they're not just watching the good moments, watch the bad moments of this journey and then eventually watch the greatness from it. Because I think you tend to appreciate a lot more of greatness when you realize the dark side of it. And so people ask me, why am I so public with everything? My posts, my opinions, whatever, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. It's because I want you to witness it. Like, witness me in public. Watch me be successful. Watch me fall down. Watch me make mistakes. Watch me rise again. And watch me achieve greatness. Do it in public. Because I think at the end of my life, this is a story that will be told for generations, hopefully the Singaporeans, and that someone from a certain background is able to do it, and hopefully they are able to find inspiration and hope from that. And so, but one of the things that I always go back is, like, I have had friends and family who were very open-minded and very supportive, did not, laugh at me, did not ask me to do like university or go and get a job or anything. I think I have been very lucky with that. I don't think that happens for everybody, but I've just been quite frankly thankful for that.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that, Felix. Because the reason I'm asking this question is that we're both from Asian families, right? So for many
Yes.
of Asian family kids, it's like finding a stable job or stay at a stable job, a stable income job is the best option, or like its best strategy according to parents' suggestions. And it also feels quite overwhelming to just, okay, I need to go to that path, like the uncertain path.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks for sharing this, because many of people who's listening could be benefited for this for what you shared. And speaking of, you said build it in public, like witness you in public. I do remember at the moment that when you share the things of ADPList or other design in public on LinkedIn, I always, oh, that's a good point. And sometimes that's a good point, but I have a different opinion, and it's also quite good to see. Okay, there are some there's a designer sharing this in public, and yeah, there are some feedback or opinions or comments from different sides, but it's also quite good to see that we really, like you, really take the design thinking approach or like a building public approach so that you can get some feedback or like even some data from different parts, from different perspectives, even some negative feedback or something that thinking differently could be really helpful. So which get me quite curious about the design process of building ADPList. Because I know that I did some research and find that at the first stage, ADPList was just a Google spreadsheet. And
Yeah.
then it became a website and yeah, have some more features. So what was the design process for doing this? And do you have anything that you feel, oh, if I want to do something from scratch now, it could be also relevant. It could be the same approach I can use for this new product.
Well, I think that, one of the best decision that we made was to be inspired by the people who have come before us in the industry. I mean, if you look at ADPLists, I think first of all, we did sort of an Amazon type of model where you could go in and instead of seeing like things that you can buy, you of course see mentors that you can connect with. And so we kind of learned from that, the categories and everything else. We took inspiration from Amazon, we took inspiration from Uber, how they, schedule things. We took inspiration from Airbnb for very clean design. And then we took inspiration from Calendly, where people are already used to, and you can book a time and, where you can call someone. So we were very clear of the things that, we did, and we were very inspired by these people, right? So I think a design process is really not just about these companies, but I think in broad sense, like design something that people are already used to, not some new interactions where people might not be aware of and be like, oh, now I have to relearn this entire interaction just so that I can like try out ADPList. No, I don't think we ever wanted that. I think the one that we really wanted was how can this be as seamless, as smooth as possible to the things that you have used in your daily lives. That to us was the design process. It's very simple. It has worked to today. And I think in many ways it's something that we continue to want to use as a design philosophy, which is design for familiarity, design where we meet the people where they're at, not try to throw them something so new that they have to relearn everything. Hopefully the adoption curves become much smoother as well for them. I think that's a big one.
I think it's quite resonate. I feel quite resonate about this because many people thought design, like innovative in design, should be something totally different, something brand new, something that people haven't saw it. But actually, it doesn't work like that. It should be like people already get used to it, or like they feel intuitive to use it, but it doesn't connect to their problem. Innovative design is just to solve the problem in a way that people thought, I should think about that. Or yeah, it feels so natural. I can just use it. So I quite like what you said. Design should be design something people get used to. Like you don't need to educate them from scratch. If you do, that could be a red flag for the whole design process, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of ADPList from stage one probably as a MVP on the Google spreadsheet, and now it's a very like a quite large scale community for mentors globally using every day. Do you think your role, how to reframe this question, is more like, do you think you're close to the business side, or like still as a designer, like wearing your designer's hat? How do you balance these two roles? Or like if you're close to this role rather than the other, like are you a
Yeah.
businessman with some designer's skill set
Got
or
it.
a designer with business understanding?
Yeah. Well, it's such a great question because I want to get this out of the way, right? Which is like business and design is two different things. It's actually the same thing. It's really the same thing. If you're a designer that doesn't think about business, which by the way, it's a lot of designers like that, it will be very bad for the design industry in general it is extremely detrimental. Will damage the designers who are doing the best work if you don't think about business, if you put them into separate buckets. And I think that somehow by nature, the people that was attracted into design is because, they think a lot and have a lot of empathy for the users. But let us not mistake that empathy for users does not mean ignoring business, because without business, you don't have a job, and I think there's just too many designers who are anti-capital. They are not a fan of capitalism. You tell them this is going to make money, they don't like it. They simply don't like it. But then without money, the mission cannot go on. The mission cannot survive. And any good mission in the world requires money to run it. I mean, who else is going to maintain the work? So I'm a designer and a businessman at the same time. I don't think I'm one or the other more than the other. I think I'm both at the same time. And that's because I'm able to say, I want to do this in the best interest of both the business and both the users. And it has to be realistic. It has to be really realistic, where designers think about how does their design benefit the business. Now, I have had designers who come here and think that they can just design very nice UI and good UX without looking at the metrics and the business side of things. Now, those designers are now gone, because I don't enjoy working with people who are not practical. Like if you want to build something great, you always have to be very, very grounded. You have to be practical. You cannot have an agenda. By being anti-capital and non-capitalistic, it also means that you just don't understand how the world works. And if someone were to be anti-capital, then I say, okay, I don't think we have to pay you salary, because that is how your world works. So maybe you don't need the money because you don't want to make money. And I think that, that is a moral responsibility to be able to think of business and design at the same time. And, frankly, I'm both, right? Which I think, unfortunately, is where designers are not today. A lot of them are still in the bubble that making money means it's evil. Making money means that you are the next Elon Musk or the Zuckerberg, where you take people's data or you just like do evil things and be a billionaire. But this billionaire are doing way more good than anyone else. I mean, they have their problems, of course, but they are, like, some of them, not all of them, but some of them are doing way more good than anyone else, donating, funding research projects. And what are these other people doing? They are just saying they don't like money, but there's no actions from their side. And I think that we have to be realistic to say that capital matters and business matters as a designer.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that sometimes you can see even the same designer argued in the morning that I need to get more pay, I'm just underpaying. And then in the afternoon, the same designer will argue with marketing team that we should go that way and get it right from design perspective rather than from pixel pushing perspective, not the business perspective. And it could happen on the same person on the same day. And it's quite interesting. Agree with you that it's always should be good to consider the baseline or like the fundamental structure of a business while we're doing design. But I also understand the point from those in-house designers, because their life could be just simplified as, okay, I need to just do this piece of work and I don't need to consider all the things around me like marketing or even product managing. I just focus on design. And they could be challenged by the disruptive ways of work when AI is growing and the ways of working is changing. So do you remember, Felix, that when did you have this idea? Like, I should get a business right alongside with design. Is it before ADPList, or like even in your previous role as a designer, did you already got this? So my assumption is that for many designers, maybe their role limits their ways of thinking or like their perspective.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, the sort of fundamental story behind the way I think like this is it happened at two different moments. So one was before ADPList and one is during, right? And I'll share two stories. But the funny thing is that in the middle, I kind of went back to this designer mindset, right? So when I was working at GoTrade as their design lead, I was their first design lead, the founding designer. They just came out from YC, right? And I just came out from my army service in Singapore. And so I joined them as the first designer, and the CEO, Rohit, he was this incredible growth thinker. He's probably one of the best growth person I've met in my life, genuinely. A very, very smart guy. And so he would be so obsessed over funnels, right? Acquisition, activation, retention, monetization, and everything else, revenue. And every day, I remember going to the office during work, and we would be discussing not about the Figma designs I've created. We'll be discussing about the metrics, right? We will be looking at spreadsheets and funnels and ideas for growth most of the time. It was barely about the pixels and the design. It was barely about that little animation. Could we make the colors a little bit nicer? Like, it was nothing of that. Like, Rohit and I discussed most of our time metrics on spreadsheets. We were looking at amplitude charts every day. It was just, and we were just requesting data from the engineering team. And this happened daily, in the first year or two even. And I only spent maybe like 30% of my time designing on Figma just to get it out. But besides that, I was just looking through numbers. So I was developed in this mindset together under Rohit, the CEO at GoTrade, which was my job as a design lead, right? And when I left GoTrade to start ADPList, at the start, because ADPList was so community driven, everything was free and it was so community driven, I returned back to this state of, yeah, let's just do it for free. Why not? Like it's a good for the mission, right? So I returned back to this mindset. And then during ADPList, about 2.5 years, maybe 3 years in, I started thinking we're going to run out of money. Like, we actually burned so much money hiring some people. They were really expensive. We were burning money on every calls. Like, oh my God, if we don't do something about it right now, we are going to run out of money. And if we run out of money, there will not be any free mentorship at all in the world. So that was when we decided to start to monetize some parts of it. We start to monetize some conferences, organize some events that were paid, selling some courses, all of these things to keep the mission free. Now, I was naive in the first 2 to 3 years, I'll tell you that, because I was in this trap of like, oh, the community loves it, just keep doing it. But when you are literally going to run out of money, like, you really start thinking, is this all worth it? Like, is it like you really got to think about the capital side of things before, just giving everything away for free just because you think it should be free. So that was the second moment where I think it hit me the hardest. Now, it hit me even harder than my first job. And the reason for that is because I'm the CEO of ADPList. I'm the co-founder. It is under my ownership. Like, if the company dies, the employees could get another job tomorrow, but it's my company. And so you feel it even more. You feel the anxiety. I feel scared, nervous, and everything, even more than being at GoTrade, right? And that was a hard, tough lesson. And we got many things. I think we're going to talk about that, but we got so many public backlash about monetization or anything at all. But like, no one ever looks on the other side and say all these things that I just described. And if you ask me today, I think this is easily one of the biggest lessons that I took away from ADPList, which is like, I'll probably never do it again in my life, but is to give anything away for free. I don't think that I would ever create anything again for free in my life. And anyone could save this. And the reason for that is because if you believe that you're creating value for the world, one, you deserve to be paid. And second, people will pay for it if there's value, right? So I think that to me, it's truly sort of a big lesson that I took away.
Free is expensive. It's
Yeah,
really
free is expensive.
in the
Yeah,
long
in
term.
Chinese there's a saying. It says 废的东西最贵. It's like
Yeah.
free is the most expensive thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, I think it's probably because of the public or like the media stories on media saying those evil capitalism stories and get people think about, okay, if we talk about money or if we talk about get charged, and it's not right, or like but if we consider your vision of this community is to support more people with a quality, with this stable, high quality mentorship, and it should have some base fundamental structure to support it, and money or the fundings should be like definitely the core of it. Because if we don't have that, or like if a system, or if even just a website, if a website doesn't have the money to support, you don't have money to buy server, or like to support the course, or any maintaining for that website. So yeah, I think will get people realize that once they start to work on something for themselves, or like they build things for themselves, and then they realize it. Okay, this is something I need to consider. But yeah, I think it's just many people haven't realized it, or haven't get into that position to realize that. And
Yeah.
if you just get paid by someone as your employer, and once the job is done, okay, you don't need to worry much about the product or the service. It's a different perspective. Like it's
Yes.
in that position, it's so easy to detach business, design, and marketing individually. Like those are separated. But in the real world, everything should be combined together. So yeah, that's my learning
Exactly.
or my takeaway from your story. Thanks.
That is such a good one. That is such a good one, right? Like you have to combine all of this to make something work.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree with that. Right, Felix, another thing I really want to talk with you around those things you recently also published on social media, because I saw your share some experiments on vibe coding, on
Yeah.
vibe designing. I don't know how we call it, like on LinkedIn or other places. So I've been following your thoughts around this and AI first design. So I think for individual designers, and I'm switching from an in-house design to a individual designer, and I thought, oh, that's great because using AI to speed up things and enable new opportunities, that could be quite good, and that's the right way to do. And also something I still, and also on the other side is like, where is the human factor? Where is the like as a designer we used to regards ourselves as a craftsman. Okay, that's the craft. Like you tweak on little things in details. But now, for example, if you're building a landing page in the old traditional way, we just tweak things, pixel by pixel and make things right, and then add a little bit of things and make it really looking good and also functioning good. But now with AI, it's so easy to build things like all at once. How to balance, like where is this craftsmanship between using AI and also get some human touch? So yeah, I don't know. So with all your experiments so far, are there any takeaways or like any learnings from doing this AI first design? And could you share it like two or three things, like two or three points about this experiment?
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think, to the question, I think first of all, that design is going to change dramatically. I mean, if you ask the people who have had used Claude Code and Cursor in particular, not Lovable and not Boats and everything else, but just Claude Code and Cursor or anti-gravity, these are pretty technical products, right? But if you ask any designers who have had used this, they would tell you easily that they have skipped across Figma for a few projects, at least a few projects, in my opinion, right? That's just my experience. But I spoke to people who have had skipped Figma for a few projects that they were launching, and that includes myself. And I think that we're seeing a new breed of designers that are really design builders, I call them, or design engineers, you want to, that are really just, because the fundamental, let us maybe back up a little bit, right? Like designers fundamentally are problem solvers. They are here to experiment with hypotheses, to prove and disprove hypotheses with design. And for a very long time, designers are unable to prove or disprove the hypothesis by themselves until an engineer comes and build the thing for them to prove or disprove something, right? At the end of the day. And I think with vibe coding on Cursor and Claude Code, what it does is that it takes the engineers out of the equation, at least for the start. And second, it allows you to immediately solve for the hypothesis to prove or disprove it without engineers and without the need to go Figma and design it first. Because usually the design comes when you are ready with everything. But what if you could just switch the process and say, hey, build something, test it out first, and then if it works, of course, you can design a better version of it. If not, you can just throw it out of the way. And if you look at it, I mean, the process is starting to reverse a little bit, like into what I just described, which is instead of designing and then giving the developers and then finally proving or disproving, that might take a long time. It's a very expensive process. You can now build something to prove and disprove your hypothesis even before you start designing. And I think that's a big, big change that most designers don't even realize it at this very moment. I think there are some designers who are still living, not just some, I think a lot of designers are still living in their own world, thinking that Figma and good visuals is going to save them. But really, it's not. I mean, unless you're working for a big company. But if you're not, then I think it is a skill like learning vibe coding on Claude Code or Cursor. It is something that you should master, and it's going to help improve your workflow as well, nonetheless, right? And so these are things where are starting to change for a very big deal. I've been experimenting with vibe coding for about 2 to 3 months right now on Claude Code and Cursor. I've built so many things from my personal website to an AI clone version of myself, to ADPList, like map, globe, I can send you the links and landing pages, analyzing tools, so on and so forth. And I've not designed it on Figma, frankly. I have not even written a line of code, to be honest. So I think a lot of designers are scared to get into Claude Code and Cursor because it looks like it is for developers. I mean, I'm not going to blame them. I mean, it does look like it is for developers, frankly. But if you're going to let your fear and your bias get in the way of your growth and your career, I mean, no one's going to come and save you. Honestly, you have to get over it and go in there and do it, right? And this is one of the reasons why I built in public. It's one of the reasons why I started the AI designer school, because I want people to know these are not as scary. These are not as scary. And I think it gets a little bit less scary and more fun when you do it with people. When you see someone like me do it as well, I think it becomes a lot more like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do this as well. Like I say, my entire life will be in public like this. And I think the good side of it is you will be able to see and hopefully be inspired to do something as well.
I love it. So many questions. And also
Yeah.
I got inspired as well. But one thing about this trend, this trending from Figma to using Claude Code or Cursor to build product directly is that I noticed that recently, or like from last year, many top designers in the industry moved to those top AI companies. For example, the designer at Notion, like Ro Yu, yeah, he moved to Cursor, and also Pablo Stanley used to be like a Figma pro, and he moved to V0 as a design lead. So it feels that this trending, like a designer try to, or like many designer still using Figma as the same as it used to before, but many top designers start to skip, or like many designer willing to take the risk, start to skip it and not use a Figma like a well-published, well-polished design to defend their identity. Oh, I'm a designer. I should build something beautiful before I share it. And many designers able to take the risk to do that. And that's really, inspiring to see. Like yourself, like other designers are sharing this. And another thing that I feel resonate is that last year I did some experiment myself. So I used Cursor to build at first it's just a crappy website, and it turned out to be a functional product at the end. But my approach is to go through what you mentioned as you prove your assumptions, or like you prove your hypothesis with this first build with this MVP supported by AI. And then I find I don't have the knowledge or like the experience to maintain it. And if I want to get it monetized, I don't have the confidence that, okay, let's ship it and charge people, and then I don't know how to maintain it. So at the end, I still got another partner, like an engineer, to support. Like we build this together at the end. So it's like the first round we build it on AI myself within 24 hours. So everything functional, and then I feel, oh, I need to find someone who can really find a mistake or like solve the issue. And yeah, I don't know if it's just me or like if it's a common approach for any designers who's building a product. Like for you, Felix, on doing those AI vibe coding experiment, if you want to build a solid product at the end, like this is your vision, is that could be different? Like or like you can do it all by yourself as a designer, like from start to launch, or you still need to find a team to collaborate at the end?
Well, I think this phenomenal question. A team is always necessary. A team is always necessary at the end of the day. But I think what a question to ask is, when does the team comes in? That is the important question of the day, right? Which is, yes, a team will be important, but when does the team come in? And I think that this team coming in is going to get later and later, right? It's going to get later and later, and maybe right after certain things happen. And I'll tell you my design process, right? Like for building something new, because a designer would be able to do it all by themselves. One, work with an AI to validate, to sort of challenge your idea, right? So if you have an idea, ask AI to challenge you to refine the idea, use Claude Pro, Claude AI, what ChatGPT, refine your idea, right? And then I think second, what you want to do is to write a very clear PRD of what you're solving with that idea. Right, that's the second step. Write a very clear PRD of what you're solving with that problem. And I think this is where a lot of people previously needed someone else, like a product manager or whatever, but a designer or even an engineer can do this right now, which is write a clear PRD using AI after you refine your idea. Now, the third step is to take that PRD and you create a flow chart with it, right? You create a flow chart of how this would work out and everything else. And so if you create the flow chart, you can use FigJam AI. So you can use FigJam or you can use like Whimsical or whatever. You can use Ask AI to, based on this particular PRD, you can create a flow chart for this particular idea. And once you have the flow chart, you can actually use, which is the next step, step number 5, which is you can then now use Figma MCP, take the flow chart, and you can tell Claude Code to build it according to this flow chart. And you will have your first MVP just within 3 hours. Everything from refining your ideas to having a PRD, to making your first flow chart, to connecting your MCP on Claude Code, to then having your prototype out, and then deploying it on Vercel. And by the end of the day, you have a working prototype that you can show your managers, you can show your customers to validate it. By the way, I have this entire workflow documented on my AI school, but this is really what I call the new age of designers. And you probably might notice that I did not even mention designing on Figma. All I'm saying is create a flowchart on FigJam, but there was no designing at all in this process. And then you already get a working product. That is how magical this is.
Yeah. I would just add this on the show notes for who's listening and the whole approach. But I think it's also explain why Figma stock like keep going down for a while, and I feel really sad about that. But yeah, it's just like okay, it seems the era of design changed from the last decade to the new decade because yeah this and I think it's many people, including me, actually quite feel, oh, have we prepared for this? Like, because we used to build our role as a designer, like, okay, let's refine it and let's use pen and paper and let's refine talking to people and build in the good old days, like let's build a paper prototype and share it with people, do some quick testing and okay, validate the idea. But now it's more like, okay, now we have the power of using AI to build everything like functional and share with real potential customers for real data. And it's exciting but scary at the same time. So I think yeah,
I get
it's more like what could be the next decade of design if we think about that. And like now I know that you are exploring it, but are there any suggestions or any tips that you would share with any other designers, like maybe including senior designers, junior designers, like how to see this as a direction and what could be some steps? Maybe you already share on your AI design school, but yeah, are there any high level learnings that you can share or like some tips that you can share?
Yeah, for sure. I think the sort of main thing that anyone can take away from this is it's really the idea that that you want to experiment things yourself and not just read things online, right? This is really the fundamental principles that I think everyone should really be aware of, is that there are just so many information online. It is not going to be helpful if you just keep listening to whatever that is out there, and if you don't try it yourself. Frankly, I've seen people who are really just for some reason listening to things online but never really touch the tools themselves, and they assume. The worst thing about a person that they can do when they have no knowledge is to assume something. Like a lot of people that I know in design are like against, I don't know, some Cursor stuff, like some Claude Code. They're like, oh, it's not doing my job or whatever. But then when I say, look, let's get on a call. Let's see where you're stuck. Let's see where you're at. Like they're not even able to open up a terminal. They have not even had Claude Code installed or Cursor. They don't even know what's a markdown file. Like the worst thing that anyone can do in life, not just on this, is to assume something without even getting onto it. And I think that is what is happening to the designers right now. for some reason, I mean, designers are the only one assuming things at this very moment, at least what I know, right? Like engineers are jumping into the thing, obviously, because their career is at risk. Product managers are obviously onto different things, but I can only speak for designers. And a lot of them are assuming. They think they know, but they don't know. They are not even on the platform. So my advice to the seniors and to whoever listening to this is just don't assume. Just get on it. If you don't know, DM me, join the AI school, whatever, or watch some YouTube video, whatever you want, right? Like, but just get on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember a year ago, or even a year and a half ago, there was a hot debate around the engineers community. Okay, vibe coding, use AI for coding, that's bad. And a lot of people are just against it. And there's no discussion now about this. Because if you don't do that, you lose your job. Like
You lose your job.
it's
Yes.
already happened. It's like the old ways when digital camera comes first and everyone said, oh, we need to use the rolls and the old ways of taking photos. But after that, after a while, that's not a question. The question is when and how. It's not about should or not. So I think it's the same discussion happening in design industry at the moment. Like it's already happened, and I think it's would be good to just start exploring. And it's actually also part of the design process, right? So we should embrace those uncertainties because that's the typical design process. And if a designer is just afraid of using these new tools or afraid of taking a risk or afraid of these uncertainties, that's probably not a good designer. And so that's my point. But Felix, I think that it's really great that we have you on this call and you share a lot. And I notice it's already 1.5 hours, so I don't want to take too much of your time. And consider you have many, you're going to move and could be a lot of things to do. Maybe just two last questions about your future. And you mentioned and you're going to move to San Francisco. Congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
are there anything that you're specifically looking for at the moment, or like are there any like a plan for your future or ADPList's future for this year? Like anything you want to share or can be shared about the planning of this year? Like what you're looking for?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this year is going to be quite unknown relatively. I think, besides following the journey on vibe coding with us and with myself on my socials, and of course, like what I'll be building, and hopefully you learn and get educated alongside, I think this year is going to be quite exciting because we don't know how AI will evolve, and I don't know how it's going to go as well in San Francisco. I mean, it's all up in the air. Of course, like the best I can do is to prepare for the unknowns, but you frankly can never really know what's coming up. So I think the best thing to do is just to follow along. And yeah, there's just, hopefully I get to connect with more people. And I think that's going to be very, very fun.
All the best on that. And maybe the last question is how can people find you? Like what's the best way to keep in touch with you, to connect you? And are there anything you want to share with the people who's listening? Could be someone who just jumped into the design industry or just someone want to learn AI would anyone who's listening, are there anything you want to share with them?
Yeah. It's a great question. I would say, stay healthy. I think that's very important. I have had friends who fall sick, after a while. And then I would say try to know exactly, try to be a very practical person. Because if you are not practical, you will be sucked into a lot of noise. And there will be so many noise in the next year, this year, whatever, right? There's always going to be so many noise. So try to be practical so that you know exactly what is a noise, what is something that you should follow, and something you should not follow. This is going to be a very, very important piece of advice, particularly for people who are, I would say, new to the industry or who are just new to a lot of things. Yeah, be practical. Don't follow the wrong things, because if you follow the wrong things, you're going to waste a few months of very, very precious times. And you don't want that.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. What I learned from this chat, Felix, have a really good vision, both for yourself or for the product you're building, and be practical, pragmatic, and about those solutions, and be open-minded about those new tools and what is happening on the industry, and take the risk of explore new things and maybe build things in public, share things more frequently, and share a few failure learnings, and you'll find, okay, this should be, yeah, all good. And there are much surprise, good
Yeah,
surprise you will got from sharing that. So
exactly.
thanks, Phyllis. Really enjoying the chat. And hopefully
Of
we
course.
can catch up later, sometime later when you settle down in San Francisco. There should be a lot of exciting things you can share after a
Yeah,
few months later. Yeah.
I'll be
All the
very
best on
excited
that.
to share. I'll be very, very excited to be back. And thank you so much for having me, Barry. This has been such an incredible conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Felix. Thanks for everyone's listening. And I'll see you in the next chapter, episode. Cheers.